From the multimedia library of the Alliance Française de Nairobi, soyez les bienvenus. Welcome to Mbogi ya MaWriters. In this edition, I'm going to be talking to our very first playwright, Alexander Nderitu by his authorial name, author of The Talking of Trees, a theatrical biography of Professor Wangari Maathai, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004. Unlike almost all our other guests, Alexander Nderitu is a fairly established writer. And this is his fourth stage play. The others have been Hannah and the Angel, Yuppies, What's Wrong with This Picture, and the Stacey Walker Interview. Alexander has written fiction, When the Whirlwind Passes, Kiss, Commander, Promise, and Africa on My Mind. He has also written a collection of poetry, The Moon is Made of Green Cheese. But in this instance, our focus will very much be on the play, The Talking of Trees. Welcome, my friend Alexander.
Thank you.
Alexander, are you writing the same sort of play? Are you mining the same vein thematically, or are all these plays that have come before different?
They're all very different and written over a long period. Hannah and the Angel, for example, was written in, around 2005 and was a co-winner of a short play contest by the theatre company here in Nairobi. After winning the co-winning, it was later translated into Japanese and Arabic, and I've been writing since then. So they're all different. They all each stands alone, and the most recent one is the most unique.
Right, I'll go for that. But do you see yourself as a writer of comedy, a writer of serious plays, a writer of social interpretation, historical interpretation? This is a biography. What's come before?
If I had a choice, if I could choose one genre, I would write comedies purely. And even now, most of my plays, including that first one, Hannah and the Angel, is a comedy. In fact, apart from the Stacey Walker Interview, all the others were comedies. So, but it's the genre I love to watch, and I love to write in it, as far as plays are concerned.
Right, I'm going to ask you a personal question, is that how in this Kenyan society does one end up being a playwright? Did you go to an exalted theatre school? Are you self-taught? Have you watched a million plays? What made you feel that one fine day you'd get up and write a play?
After Hannah and the Angel did very well, later at one point I moved from Nairobi back into my hometown of Nyeri, where I met a mzee who is no longer with us. He's called Lee Kanyari, and he was a veteran of film and theatre. And together with him and a few other people, we started a theatre scene in Nyeri. It didn't exist before. We started a group called ACT, Artists for Contemporary Theatre. And Mzee Lee was our father figure and our mentor. And so for me, it was an apprenticeship. Although I've been reading plays since I was in high school, I can still remember plays like reading the actual scripts of plays like the Government Inspector and the Insect play by the brothers Capek and so forth, a lot of Shakespeare. So I was always interested in it, but to actually get into it was with the Lee Kanyari and an ACT theatre group, and that was also when I started writing articles on the theatre scene.
Well, just to put you at ease, the name Lee Kanyare Kagwongo, I'll add another name, is very much something to somebody of my generation.
Yeah.
The late Lee Kanyare and I acted in a play called The Rainmaker at what is today's Ukumbi Mdogo. And this was the theatrical life of Nairobi in the 1970s. So we go back. We have to discuss that later. But so much for that. So you have been involved in playwriting, been mentored by great people of Kenyan theatre, and here you are, you decide to write, in this instance, a biography of Professor Wangari Maathai. Now my question to you is that there is so much out there on social media, on YouTube, in films, I dare say, in documentaries, interviews. What did you think you'd bring to Wangari Maathai's life by writing a play about her?
I mentioned earlier that I write a lot of articles on theatre, and one of them was a paper on Kenyan theatre. And in it, I questioned why we don't have a major play on Wangari Maathai, who definitely at that time was definitely Kenya's most famous woman and a person of many fasts. Now, there have been some plays on her, but all minor stuff, one in Swahili that was done in Tanzania, nothing major. And at the time when I wrote that paper, the paper was titled Kenyan Theatre, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. At around that time, there had been other major plays going on in Kenya, one on Winnie Mandela, called Winnie the Opera, one on Fela Kuti, the musician, simply titled Fela. And I was asking why we don't have one on Wangari Maathai. And when the paper went out and people read it, one particular actor / producer, well known in Kenya, I think he called me or emailed and told me, you know what, you write it and I'll produce it. And for the first time, I actually started thinking about writing the play that I initially just wanted to watch. So I want to do it bigger, you might say that.
In the 101 book, you either write a straight play or you write a musical, but you have actually written a play which is a combination of both, which is a hybrid, which is in fact rare to me because you have moments of dialogue and then you have song. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that throughout the play there's more than 4 songs. Maybe there are more. You
probably less. There are 3 or 4.
There are 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question: why 3 or 4 songs?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, some of the major plays that inspired me, like Winnie and Winnie the Opera and Fela Kuti, Fela the play. Actually, they were musicals, both of them. So initially, I had the concept of a musical, but when I decided to actually write it, now remember I write mostly prose, novels, short stories, things of that nature, and I do this solo. When I write the poems, all my thrillers, I do them by myself. I do the research and I do the writing and so forth. Now, with the plays, it's a different kettle of fish because theater making, like filmmaking, is collaborative, and musicals, it might look, if you really enjoyed it, it might look like it's easy work, but I think that's the hardest, form of stage production you can come up with. In particular, you need to work with the musicians right from the beginning because the songs are central to the whole production. And you can't imagine, for example, Sarafina without the songs, so that they're very key and they have to go in at the moment when you're developing the play. So I changed tack and decided to just write a straightforward play, but I had some ideas for songs. A bit of there's some duets, and because I'm a big hip hop fan, a big rap fan. So there's one rap song inside there. I should probably mention in one of my previous plays, Hannah and the Angel. There's a whole rap battle. So that's just me. It's just immersing myself a bit into the work. So there's, President, the character of President Moi does a rap song, which I think is quite interesting. Although in neighboring Uganda, the president did a rap song for the youth, and it went viral on YouTube. It's someone produced it later professionally, and it's titled "Do You Want Another Rap," which I thought was very interesting. So in my play, we have a Kenyan president doing something similar.
Alexander, I'm going to ask, I've read the play, obviously. I have to read all these wonderful books in order to talk to people like you. When the music is there, normally there'll be a lyricist who's given an annotation and a song that guides the director as to how to sing. But when I looked at the songs in your play, correct me if I'm wrong, if I were to direct this play, I've no idea what I'd sing, or ask my cast to sing, rather.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to me. But then initially, I should probably mention that initially I wrote this play about 3 years, but not continuously, Initially, I did not intend to turn it into a book at all. It was strictly for the stage. So I was going to collaborate with the theater group, maybe more than one and so forth. But after I finished in 2019, and then next year, 2020, we had the whole COVID thing. And I thought, oh my God, this play will never come out because, with the lockdowns and everything. And since I do books, I'm a book person, so I decided to bring it out as a book. Now, when I'm writing the songs, each song, I do have a certain basic tune in my head. So it's not recorded so far. So the person would have to talk to me. And by the way, in the book at the beginning, where the corporate information is, it does say that the book does not include performance rights, which means you can read the book, study it, and so forth. But to actually put it up as a production, you'd have to consult the playwright. And at that point, I can give you the tunes and so forth, so that you won't be lost.
Right. Well, you raise another interesting question for this genre, is that our children here in Kenya, as far as I know, I talked to a publisher who said that people should appreciate, young children should appreciate the craft of what goes into a play, but they chose set books for plays which hadn't actually been performed. Now, I won't name names because we're not here to shame and scam or whatever it is, but I find that very bizarre. But you seem to be going the same way. You're saying, I'm going to write a play, but, put it on 100 years from now.
Until the COVID situation goes away and things are back to normal. As we speak, I've applied for two different grants concerning this work, because with the kind of situation we have with the economy, first of all, in a bit of a depression due to COVID, and then the whole thing of social distancing and so forth. So it's not a good time for events, including theatrical events. But this play would be much better on stage, and so it's definitely destined for stage. In fact, as we speak, there's already one group that has approached me that wants to do it, and they're very eager. But I personally don't think it's time, and I don't think the group is big enough to do justice to the story of Wangari Maathai, or my version of it. It's mostly entertainment.
I'm going to pass on to the idea of structure.
Okay.
So here we are. Your play is in 8 acts. It's got 26 scenes, and there is a shifting of contexts. We first find Wangari Maathai as a young high school girl in a biology lab, chatting to a Catholic sister. And then we find her in the United States of America at college. Then she comes back to Kenya. Then we find her in the living room of her first marriage as a couple. Then we find her in Uhuru Park. Then we find her in winning the Nobel Prize for Peace. I ask you, why did you choose to take the span of the whole life as opposed to a slice of life where you might give your character more depth as a human being. Because now we're just ticking off the boxes. Went to school, went to the States. How are we going to get into the inner mind of our lead character? Or did that not concern you?
A couple of years ago, I was talking to a lady who is a former administrator at a local university. And she told me that whenever she asked campus girls who their role model in life was, because now she runs an NGO, a gender NGO, they almost always said Wangari Maathai. But then when she asked them, what do you know about Wangari Maathai? They would always go to the Nobel Prize. That seemed to be the only thing they knew about Wangari Maathai. And this former administrator was telling me that she knew Wangari Maathai personally, and her life was not glamorous. So if these people had more insight into their role model's life, in fact, to quote her, is that they wouldn't even want that life. So this poem, this play, I didn't want to just highlight the obvious. Incidentally, I come from the same region as Wangari Maathai, Teto in Nyeri County. We both come from the same place, and we knew more about her than the average person might. In fact, she was an MP, she was our MP for some time, and so forth. So we had more insights. So in this play, I decided to show the other things that before she became famous. So we see her as a young child with this education within the Catholic system. And the Kennedy Airlifts, the so-called Kennedy Airlifts, were very important. They played a very important role. Not just Wangari Maathai was one of the airlift children, but there were others, and they had profound impact on the early part of our democracy. And so I wanted to show how that came about, how she got picked to go to the US, because her education had major impact. And all through, like when she's there, for example, a lot of people would, if they had to draw her, they would draw her with the dreadlocks and the kitenges and so forth. But in this play, we see how she was even before she adopted that style of fashion and so forth. So it's just to give more perspective. Although I would like to mention that of all the plays I've written, all of them were basically 3 acts. This one had got the most, but it's just because I was trying to, her life was what it was, and so different things happen at different times, and I just had to segment it that way.
Preoccupations of the director. Scene 1, we're in a high school. Scene 2, we're in America. What's the director to do? No, the loaded question is that as a playwright, do you envisage a manner in which you might encourage a director in Tokyo, Beijing, Ouagadougou to think that this is a play worth doing on their turf and to interpret it? Or is it only for Kenyans, and better still, for people who come from Tetu in Nyeri? A little didactic slice of whole life to educate children about this wonderful woman. Because the theatre is a sacred place, is my understanding of it. I'm wondering, as a playwright, how much you're thinking about what the audience will feel when they see what you've written.
Yeah, writing a play is very different from writing prose. When I'm writing a play, I actually have the stage in my mind.
Yes, but then, sorry, I will interrupt.
Okay.
Because I said scene 1, it's your play, high school. Scene 2, college in the United States. Scene 1, Wangari, school uniform, all dressed up, talking to the nun. Scene 2, Wangari with her best mate in a dorm at whatever college in the US. Now, I ask you again for the apprenticeship. Is there 100 minutes of silence as we wait for her to change from her uniform to... What is the craft? What is the craft for the young playwright who wants to emulate Alex Nderitu? How is this problem going to be solved? Now, the simple answer is you can say you're going to workshop it because you have to finish it and then it would get better. But the problem exists because you've printed it.
For this particular play, scene 1, she's in high school, inside a classroom.
Right.
Yeah. In scene 2, she's in a classroom again, but this time in college in the US.
Right.
Now, there's not too much difference because it's classroom.
Exactly.
So,
And here's our audience watching. We're watching. I've got that. They're in a classroom.
Yeah.
How have we crossed the Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah. So after in the stage directions, there is a blackout. After the scene, when it breaks. So during that time, you can change the backdrop or put something like an American flag there. So, and for example, the uniforms, like the actress playing the role, in scene one, she could actually have the other uniform inside. So when it's time to change, you just get rid of one uniform and sit down again in pretty much the same place. But because it's just from classroom to classroom, it's not much change.
Right.
Yeah, especially if you put something like an American flag.
All I'm saying, Alexander, is that maybe because for our youthful audience that it can be tackled, but it's something that leapt out to me as a directorial challenge. That's the word of the moment. Now, with the juxtaposition of these forms, the music, you would, for example, say that Kenya becomes, I'm looking again in my notes, the considerations of the actor. And I'm being unfair on you because I'm saying I'm dealing with your great mentor who's no longer with us. I've had in my own life the privilege of becoming a stage actor first, then becoming a film actor second, then a director third, then writing plays, in my late 50s. But I'm very conscious of the fact of what it is that one can ask an actor to do. So you say Kenya has become independent, and there we are, we're in some far remove, and Kenya has become independent. And the stage directors say they put on the music, they hug, they kiss, they are so driven by emotion, your directions, that they even bring it upon themselves to cry. What is the build-up for an actor to do that simply upon receiving the news that Kenya has become independent on the 12th of December, 1963? Be your own director.
When Wangarma there, part of the reason she even got a good education was because that the Mau situation in this country. So it was actually safer for her to be in school, because education for girls and so forth. So,
understood.
Yeah. So
I'm understanding. I'm saying the play's the thing, wherein we shall catch the conscience of the king. Old Shakespeare. What are people seeing? What are Claudius and all these people? The guilt factor. How does this come across that an actor can display this extreme emotion from nothing textually? What have you given your actor in your text to make them go completely ecstatic over the fact that the country's become independent?
Yeah, that's what I was explaining about what goes before. Because when the country finally gets independence while she's away, it's like if you're watching the Olympics, the recently past,
right,
and you see your country win.
Eliud Kipchoge is...
When Eliud Kipchoge broke the record the first time,
yes,
I nearly cried, and I was in Kenya and he was in Europe. So it's that connection when something great has happened in your homeland. Or so they thought, when they came back, it wasn't idyllic, but it was something that they had lived, the struggle for independence is something that they had seen firsthand. So they're just celebrating that. How the actor will be able to convey those emotions to the audience.
You give the stage direction.
The stage directions,
cry.
That's up to the actor. We just give you the scenario. the scenario.
No, you say they cry.
Yeah, and it's jubilation.
Jubilation.
Yeah, hugging, tears of joy if possible.
Right.
Yeah, that's up to the actor.
Okay. Yeah. Again, in terms of structure.
Okay.
You see, if you say you did a lot of research.
Yes.
Now, this is the question that I'm going to put to you, because I sincerely believe that somebody exercising their craft at this level is looking at all these problems that I see on the page as a would-be director. Now, if you go to the web, there are some quotations attributed to Wangari Maathai. And some of those quotations have become famous in a way. And one of the quotations which is in your play is a quotation that she gave as an adult. And she says, oh, just a biology textbook from the library. It has all these interesting facts that I would never have imagined. Science really opens up your eyes, doesn't it? For instance, there's a stream that flows from a fig tree near my home in Ihide. The water is so clean, you can see everything on the riverbed. One time when I was a child, I saw what appeared to be a beautiful pearl necklace right inside the stream. I won't continue, but this is something that Wangari actually said as an adult woman. You've done your research and you've given her those words as a teenager. Would you defend that as a creative ploy?
Well, that particular speech is not very didactic as some of her later statements.
Yeah, but the point that I'm getting to, Alexandra, is that, you know, I don't speak quite the same way at 60 that I spoke when I was 16. I'm over 60, so, but I've changed.
Yeah, but in that particular scene, they actually were discussing, biology and
I'm discussing craft, the playwright's craft. I'm not unbuttoning your aims and aspirations. I am giving a master class to young viewers, and young, let us say, equals 14 to 18. What are they to make of the statement that you've just made?
The direct quotes were because I wanted to get, even though it's a work of entertainment, I did want them to get an essence of the essence of Wangari Maathai. So I do have some direct quotes. Now that particular one, like I say, in fact, later one of my own issues with the work was, when I watched a lot of documentaries and clips of her talking, and she was a professor, she was an intellectual. And some of material, especially later, is so didactic. When it's there, it doesn't even look natural. It doesn't seem colloquial. But that's how she spoke, so it's still there. And that particular passage, I wouldn't be surprised if she actually said something similar while she was even a teenager. She was quite an intellectual.
Fair enough. Also in this play, she's very famous for those of us who are sort of Wangari Maathai lovers of the hummingbird. The hummingbird, little bird of the forest, there's a big fire on, goes little specks of water and tries to put the fire out. She goes and gives her Nobel Prize speech. She dies and certain world leaders praise her. You give those speeches in their entirety. Now, I'll tell you a story. When we did a play once about Martin Luther King, and this was, again, a phenomenon of the 80s, and we did something here at the Alliance Française called In Search of the Drum Major, and it was all about Martin Luther King. And in those far-flung days, we had somebody play Martin Luther King and have a dream speech. We had somebody play Malcolm X. So many years later, we were told that from the Martin Luther King estate or foundation, you can't do that. And if you're going to make a movie, and it's Selma, you can have the speech that he gave on the bridge, but that whole thing of copyright, you cannot give it word for word. Are you hearing this for the first time? Is this a revelation? You've given lots of speeches word for word. You could, our 18-year-old youngster could end up, well, in jail, I guess.
Well, it's not word for word. Whether it's word for word, it's quotes. It's excerpts. But otherwise, I have just changed up the words. But so it's the same message. The
Nobel Prize speech is pretty much as is.
No,
so we're not going to go into that inquisitorial thing of did I read the play or didn't I?
Yeah.
I found 2 instances where I found what you said on the web. That's what I'm asking you. Can we do this? Is it acceptable? Is this creativity? Is it creative to lift and cut and paste and say, I wrote this?
Well, when someone makes public statements, if, for example, if there are several TV stations recording, like you speaking, each TV station only as copyright over their recording, not over, don't have ownership of what you said. They can't say, nobody else can broadcast this and so forth. Now, a lot of this, even before, when I was still conceptualizing the play, before I even wrote the first word, I talked to a lady from Kekobo, which is a Kenya Copyright Board. I wanted to know what the legal parameters would be for.
Yes, that's the question. You put the words into my mouth. What are the legal parameters?
I am a wordsmith.
Yes.
So, and I told her it's a public figure. And she told me, with public figures, there's much more leeway. As if the information is public domain information, then there wouldn't be a problem. But if it's a private citizen, even how you got that information could come into question. So now the things that I mentioned in this in this particular work is public domain information. So now copyright is even when it's some things that they're not under copyright, just public domain stuff. But even when copyright exists, it is limited. It has limitations. We have what are called fair dealing laws, and which means someone can take an excerpt from your work, even if it's copyrighted, and use it either for a review or news or analysis or education and so forth. So the issue comes when you take something and pass it off as your own. But if Wangari Maathai said something and you share that quote, that's not necessarily that's different. You also notice if you do even a rudimentary research online that these things are shared, and nobody is getting illegal. For example, the story you mentioned of the hummingbird. Someone took it and with her own voice and made an animation out of it. In fact, that's the first thing that comes out when you search for that hummingbird story. So you notice that and many other versions. And she herself told the story in many different fora. So, which of those YouTubers has copyright?
Alexander, you're not talking to me, you're talking to them. I'm just setting you up to answer the question. So don't take it too personally. The next question that I'm going to ask has, again, this idea of the complexity of a human life. This is a woman whose married life ended up in divorce. And again, you feature that in your play. But it seems to me that husband was challenged as a man, high testosterone, by the fact that she was sort of doing well and wasn't coming home and was going off and doing degrees. Whereas the information on the ground is that it was a much more painful passage for them. In her book, Unbowed, there's some very sort of moving chapters. But when you talk about theatre for entertainment, you, in a way, gloss over this moment of her life by just sort of them singing a song, saying, I leave you, do you love me? Yes, I love you. No, you don't love me. Bye. I feel you could have given me more. Because I think one can feel extreme emotion in the theatre, and it's one of the rare places, very much akin to the church, where it's a place of worship. And you've made this entertaining that people are going through a cruel divorce.
You're right about me glossing over that particular aspect. Now, Wangari Maathai will be known for human rights, activism, conservation, and fight for democracy. Sort of a legacy. And those are the kind of things that I was interested in. I personally was not interested in the
complexity of character.
No. In her wedding, she will not be known for relationship drama. Yeah, she's known for in fact, I wanted to show the process. Like I mentioned earlier about the lady who was saying people don't know much about her. So the process that led to her getting all these awards. So in fact, apart from the Nobel, she had many other awards. So that's what I was most interested in. Now, if you go online, a lot of things are said. For example, about her marriage and divorce and so forth. back and forth. So personally, I was not interested in that aspect. So I pretty much left it out. I didn't want it to overshadow the other things you said. And like you mentioned,
the great milestones of her life.
Absolutely, like you said, there are a lot of chapters because a lot of she's involved in such profound things, like when you're fighting for multipartyism or for the forests and so forth. Even to me, even her own battle with illness and so forth. This is a place she's arrested and she's got arthritis and later she gets cancer. To me, that internal struggle is more important than everybody has
right. So,
relationships. So to
so
me,
a playwright makes choices.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yes.
Now you're the one who's framing things for me. You see?
Right.
Yeah, we're two of a kind, two playwrights.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm pretending so far not to be one. So there's this idea again of humor.
Oh.
Again, let's go back to our beloved bard, William Shakespeare. He has this terrible Macbeth, awful things are happening, and then he just has this sort of gatekeeper who's talking about drink, and if you drink too much, you won't be able to perform in bed. And then Hamlet, awful things are happening, and then he has two people holding up a skull, alas, poor Yorick, and everybody has a little moment before a whole bunch of people start having a sword fight, and by the time you're finished, there are 20 people dead on stage. But he is deliberately going for lightening things up. You, Alexander Nderitu, have the Grim Reaper, and this is death. And death is personified. Death is personified, comes in and sort of touches. It's your turn, Alexander. You're going to die soon. What do you expect the audience reaction to be? Profound sort of shock and horror, or they fall about laughing?
Yeah, well, that was just
the Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper
Dead.
appearing.
So okay, here he is. Yeah.
It was just a visualization of what was happening. Someone was about to die, and its drama was being a bit dramatic. Although I'd like to say that's not the first time that we have a character representing something else. For example, there is.
But I'm asking you to see the playwright's obligation to envisage the reaction from the audience of what they've written.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of...
So terrible things happen. Oh, my mother's just died. Well, Kenyan audiences are very weird because Kenyan audiences, when you say my mother's just died, we tend to sort of break out laughing. But I think we've just got... I've had those moments on stage. So they're cultural responses to high emotion. But, okay, so you've taken this. So he would be coming in dressed in black, with a
the most stereotypical thing with the hide and the hood.
Okay.
Well, and he was rather comical.
Right. But are you aiming for light relief or?
Absolutely.
That was the question that
I was aiming for light relief throughout the entire book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to add to something you said earlier, also in at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
There's the whole sword fight, and a guy gets stabbed.
Yes.
And he still has, as he dies, he still has time to crack a pan.
Yes.
When he says, ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a brave man.
Right. Yeah, that's all Mercutio. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yes,
Okay. Time is not on our side. I just like to see again in the craft we have somebody who comes in as Daniel Arap Moi, somebody who comes in as Wole Soyinka, somebody who comes on as Bill Clinton, somebody who comes on. This is a major problem for me as a Kenyan playwright of writing plays where Kenya is a multiracial society, and in role play, one of my plays, the assumption was that we'd have somebody who represented the sort of Karen Mzungu, and then there was the Muhindi. But when we came to casting, there wasn't that social cohesion to have white actors and Indian actors to be part of my play. So this idea of people playing across racial type. Now, when Bill Clinton comes in to condole with Wangari Maathai, who are you going to fly in to play that part? Again, in a way that the audience will say, that's Bill Clinton, or that's Wole Soyinka, sounds like him. Is there somebody suddenly going to come out with a big blonde wig, 100 things? But the response will be high concentration or laughter. ha ha ha, that's not Wole Soyinka, it's Anthony. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I think with when you watch a show, a
Yes.
play or a film,
The suspension of disbelief.
there's
yeah.
always suspension of disbelief. So the characters are described, even how they look, like age and temperament and so forth. So an actor will do his best to fit that role. Whether the director decides he's going to look for an actual Mzungu or look for an African to just play the role, blonde wig and so forth. I'm relying on the audience to suspend the disbelief, and when he starts talking, and there's, if it's, for example, Obama, and
Right,
there's the anthem playing, and so on, the flag is there, and he's got all the gesticulation. Yeah, so it's suspension of disbelief.
Time waits for no man or woman. I have to ask you in the 5 minutes that remain of our allotted time, very quickly, before we give our 3 stock questions to every writer, could you comment on the state of playwriting in Kenya, published playwriting? Is it a healthy state? Are we a nation of, or are we all going to go back to this literary desert and it's all barren and we've got no idea? What do you think?
There's very little in the way of published plays, but playwriting, that is, fairly vibrant. But since the theatre scene itself is in a depressed state right now, there's not too much to report from that area.
Right. Alexander, what do you read as an individual?
I read across genres. Anything that is interesting, I'll give it a try.
Any particular favorites, would you say?
Oh, yeah, thrillers. Yeah,
Thrillers?
Yeah, my initial ambition was to be a thriller writer.
Right. So, okay, who's the go-to thriller writer that you read on a regular basis?
Frederick Forsyth,
Right.
and Robert Ludlum, I think, were my biggest influence. And Ian Fleming. I just wanted to be
like James Bond.
Yeah, the James Bond series.
Okay. Yes. When do you read? How regularly?
Oh, well, as often as I can.
30 novels a week?
I wish I could. No, I read mostly when I'm traveling, and at night, usually before I sleep. Of late, I've been reading a lot of, for example, I like short stories, because you can read like one before you sleep, and so forth. But when I'm traveling, I always have more books that I can read.
Right, and this is the question to have some converts to the cause. Mm-hmm. Why do you write?
To communicate and to entertain.
Expand. To communicate what? To entertain in what way?
If I'm trying to send a message, I'm much better at writing than articulating it. So, and I've always been that way. I write much better than I speak and so forth. So, it's my favorite way of expressing myself, and I've been at it for quite a while. Reading and learning to the art of writing and so forth. So, writing is my favorite way to, and that's why I write in so many genres. Some of my works are very serious, but most are lighted. It's entertainment, but often I want to send some kind of a message, and I like to commemorate things. For example, I have short stories on what happened at Westgate and what happened in Garissa and so forth. These are published elsewhere, not self-published, with anthologies and magazines and things of that nature. So it's entertainment, but there's some gravity to it, and sometimes, not always, but there's also some kind of message.
It's time for us to stand up and acknowledge our audience. Thank you very much. We can do a stage bow. And so from the Médiathèque, the Multimedia Library of the Alliance Française de Nairobi, à la prochaine. Till next time. Thank you.